welcome to Yellowdig Spring 2022 Kickoff. And today we will be doing a lot of stuff. We're going to go through some brief introductions of us so you know who you're talking to. We're going to share some resources that you can use to find answers to your questions or learn how to do something in Yellowdig that you didn't know how to do before, and just where to get help. Then we're going to go into the platform and we will give you all what you probably paid to be here to see here today, and that would be a little bit of a refresher and all the recent updates. We'll talk about how you can get started again in your course, how you can use pieces of the settings from your old course and move them into your new course if you've used Yellowdig in the past. We'll also talk about what you should do once you get going, you as the instructor. We'll hopefully find some time to share a little bit about data to inform your teaching, the data that's in Yellowdig platform that you can use. And of course, you can ask us questions. And as far as asking us questions, you may note that at the bottom of your Zoom window, there's a Q&A button. Feel free to post your questions right in there and we will get to them either immediately or when it makes sense, depending on what we're planning on covering. So let's start by introducing ourselves. I'll go first because I'm already talking. Hi everyone, I'm Bob Ertischek. I'm Yellowdig's Senior Community Success Consultant, and I've been with Yellowdig for 22 months, and I've been enjoying it quite a bit, to be honest. I used to be a professor. I taught political science for a long time. I also spent time before that as an instructor, as an instructional technologist and faculty developer. And I was dissatisfied with learning management systems and their discussion tools. So I tried to find my own outside of the LMSs, and they came with their own set of problems. When I found Yellowdig, it really was what I had been looking for all along. And now I work with our partners to share best practices and help you out in any way I can. Brian?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Yellowdig's Vice President of Academic Product Engagement. My background is all in psychology and education. Got my PhD from Vanderbilt in psychology, did a postdoc at the University of Delaware, started dabbling in ed tech and consulting with different companies to help them improve learning in their technology. And I started working at Yellowdig about a little over 3 years ago. I've done a lot of the research on the platform. I've been working with faculty for a long time now, and I help run the student support side of things and also work closely with our product team. So I'm happy to kind of answer most questions from a research lens in terms of the research we've previously done, and looking forward to helping everybody get better outcomes.
All right, so just a couple of ways that you can interact with us and learn a little bit more. If you want to discuss your course one-on-one with me, I'm happy to do it. I'm also happy to do sessions with your colleagues in your departments, or if you're an instructional designer, with the instructors that you work with. We'd be happy to do that for you. You can reach out to me at bob@yellowdig.com if that would be useful. Brian, take the next piece.
Yeah, so we have a user certification course. If you haven't taken it, I definitely recommend it. We call it a course, but it really only takes about an hour or less. Within that platform at learn.yellowdig.co, we have a number of other sort of shorter courses or specialty courses for things like STEM courses or administration, things like that. So I definitely would recommend checking that out.
All right, fantastic. And support@yellowdig.com. That's the place to go if you encounter any technical issues that you are having trouble with, that you can't figure out. And it's also a place for your students to go. And I make that distinction because you don't need to come to us when it's your student's problem. We can work that out for you without your needing to be an intermediary. If you give students that address, support@yellowdig.com, our team will get them back up and running on track. And of course, we'll help you out the same way too. The next piece is the knowledge base, help.yellowdig.co. It's one-stop shop for questions about the pedagogy and technology of the Yellowdig platform. Basically, it's a place where you can go to answer probably at least 90% of your questions or issues related to how something works in Yellowdig, how the pedagogy, what the pedagogy is, and what we're trying to do, and tips and tricks for success in the platform.
Yeah, and that knowledge base, we're finding that about 99% of the people that search for something there find an answer to their question without needing to contact support. So I definitely recommend that as kind of a first stop for everybody. There is a help area with a direct link to the knowledge base in the bottom left of the platform whenever you're using it. And if you can't find what you're looking for in the knowledge base immediately, there's also a place to contact support in there. So,
All right, coming up soon. Well, every month, because they're called monthly. We're going to have a monthly office hours session. We had this through most of 2021, and we're going to have it every month in 2022. You'll be able to ask your questions, any questions you have, and Brian and I will do our best to answer them. We'll also, this is a good place to go and find out new features that are appearing in the platform at any particular given time during the year. But basically, it's a time for you to address whatever it is that you want to address, any questions you have, how to make something work better in your class or anything like that. And even technical issues, generally speaking, we can point in the right direction at least. And finally, we have the YISC, the Yellowdig Instructor Support Community. That link or that QR code will get you in. It is a community for other Yellowdig instructors around the world. And you can share your best practices, your experiences, ask any questions. We're also there too. And we also provide some content in there as well to keep it interesting. How do humans learn, Brian?
yeah, so what we found at Yellowdig, or what we know from research, I guess I should say, is that most formal learning, only about 10% of learning happens in a formal learning environment. And a lot of additional learning happens as students kind of step into the social space and are able to bring in and incorporate that learning into real world experiences or incorporate real world examples into their learning environment. So Yellowday has been really striving to kind of add that to most courses when we're talking about course-based uses for our communities. And we really see that as students are able to become the teachers and able to interact socially and interact with things that are happening in the world, they really do learn better. They get more engaged, and most of the sort of benefits of having a social learning platform really emerge. So overall, that's our goal of using Yellowdig, and most of our users are interested in extending learning in that way. And how we do that, Bob, if you want to go to the next slide, um, you know, we sort of looked at the fabric of teaching at the time that the company started, and a lot of social assignments were focused around a week-long assignment where the instructor would, determine what students were going to talk about, or tell students to share some particular thing that the other students were going to give feedback on. And there would be, a due date for that participation, and students were supposed to interact around those things. And there's a few problems with that framework that that we identified, and that Yellow Day is designed to work around, if you will. A couple of those things.
Are
Sorry,
you still?
yeah, I'm gonna keep talking. There's a couple of things that are shown here that I think are important to think about. As the go-getter student comes in and is the first one to get started, they get a kind of cold start. The only thing they have to do is respond to the instructor. There's nobody there yet to really interact with. There's nothing else for them to interact with, right? So every week, if they're one of the first students in, not much to do, they actually learn to procrastinate more as a result of that, and they come in later and later. As students procrastinate more, there's less time to have good back and forth conversations. These tend to be really focused on the prompt or whatever the instructor wanted to say, and so there's not a whole lot of interesting things going on. And for those procrastinating students that come in at the last minute right before the deadline, they're actually not having a social experience at all, right? Because they're responding to the instructor. they're responding to a couple of other students, but nobody is ever reading or responding to anything that they have said and interacting with them. So those are kind of the problems with this sort of framework. And Bob, I think, is going to tell you how we're thinking about uh, going around those
Yeah, I just want to add that, students view this as an assignment with a due date, and they do it when it's due. That the procrastination is built in, and the quality of the responses is going to be based on, I have to do this as part of my assignment, so I'm going to just quickly pick the last prompt in front of me and say, well said, I agree, I wrote the same thing. You're not going to get real discussions there. And we view our communities as very differently, as this diagram purports to show. I want you to notice a few different things here from that other slide. First of all, you might note that the instructor is not necessarily at the beginning of every conversation that's happening here. On top of that, you'll see that there are more than one conversations going on, more than one conversation can be going on at a time during a particular period of time. And on top of that, students have agency to bring in what they think is important. They can start conversations. They can ask and answer each other's questions. And that's a really important thing to think about. When a student has, first of all, it's great that students are going to feel comfortable in Yellowdig asking questions in a way that they might not in a synchronous classroom or even in another discussion board. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But when a student tries to answer another student's question, they have to first think that they understand the question well. Second, think they know that they know the answer. And then third, and most importantly, figure out how to effectively communicate that answer to their peers. That's a real learning experience for the student answering the question. And in Yellowdig, that is encouraged and through the point system incentivized, actually. So you'll also notice that these little dots indicate conversations that maybe have faded out for a little bit and then have come back to life for one reason or another. And that could be because there's something in the news related to what's going on, what a course concept was earlier in the course. And this is an opportunity for those students to make that concept real to themselves. For example, I taught American government, and in week 2, we would start talking about the electoral college and how they are involved in electing the president. If in week 6, like last December, that's actually happening, that's an opportunity for my students to engage in that and see, you know what? Okay, now I get it. Now I see it. It's not just an abstract concept. It's a real thing. And as for me, I'm being selfish here. I can see in the Yellowdig community exactly how they're getting it, and I can course correct. I can say, oh, you got it, and I'm cool. Or I can say, you know what? This isn't quite exactly how it works, and I can make adjustments before any kind of final assessment. Brian, anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that by having multiple conversations sort of happening in parallel, students, you know, read all of them and decide where and how they're going to participate. And so, in having more conversations and more interesting things happening, and more interesting things happening all the time, students are more likely to come back often, take part in conversations where they truly have something to contribute, and they're more likely to consume a lot more of the information. So a lot of what we're hoping to build in Yellowday is actually, reading, thinking about that material, and really contributing thoughtfully, which makes the experience better for everyone and definitely improves learning.
All right, so now that we've set the stage for and hopefully refreshed your recollection on some of our thought behind the platform, let's get into how you're going to get started for this coming semester. And the first thing that we always think it's a good idea to remember is that Yellowdig Engage is a single semester long assignment. Again, that's one assignment for the entire term. And you can think of it as a participation grade. And to make that work, you need to create one assignment link in your learning management system course shell. So one assignment link that relates to the gradebook that will pass back to the gradebook. The reason you need to do that, to make that one assignment link, is because students will have two things accomplished when they click on that link. First of all, they'll be entered into that Yellowdig community from the course roster. And secondly, it will enable the grade passback function, the ability of Yellowdig to share its points back and convert them into a grade book entry in whichever way you've designated for whatever amount, whatever percentage. And it's important to note that in the learning management system, because of the LTI connection, learning tool interoperability connection between Yellowdig and the learning management system, Yellowdig passes back regularly the numerator, meaning the number of points students have earned, and the denominator, the number of points that students can earn up to that particular date. So that it's going to be an interesting, the way that students will see it is that their percentage of their grade in the grade book will vary based on what that denominator is. So after week 1, if a student has earned their full credit, the numerator and the denominator will be equal, and it'll show them being in the grade book as having full credit. But the day that that rollover occurs, the denominator will go up by, it'll double. It'll go to from 1,000 points to 2,000 points. And the student hasn't earned those other points yet. So the gradebook entry will be, will show 50% at that particular moment in time. And so it's important to let your students know that the Yellowdig point widget, which we'll get into a little bit, is the real point of truth for what their grade is. Some instructors mute the Yellowdig gradebook entry in the Canvas, in the learning management system gradebook to avoid that confusion.
Yeah, and Corey asked, does this mean that we should create the community through our learning management system, or can we create them in Yellowdig and then link them? You can use either method. Typically, if you're going to link Yellowdig to a learning management system, you can use these communities without linking them. But if you're going to use your learning management system as the access pathway, it's typically easiest just to integrate Yellowdig into the course. And then when you launch from the course into Yellowdig for the first time for that course, it'll prompt you to create the community, and you can just do the full community creation flow.
I just want to add that if you do have an LMS course shell, I would recommend that you do use Yellowdig and integrate it with that course shell, because it'll create fewer problems in inviting students and getting them in there, and ultimately in recording the grade at the end.
Yeah. So yeah, Corey, I would integrate it into your course first, then launch into Yellowdig, and that will start the community creation process. Our system basically detects if there is a new course that doesn't have a community associated with it. It will, it'll prompt you to create the community when you first enter. Once the community is created and it's linked to the course, it'll just launch directly into that community every time.
If, however, you have created a Yellowdig community and then you want to hook it up with your LMS course, we can show you how to do that too.
Yeah.
All right. Number 2.
Yeah. So, as the person that runs support, one thing that I will say is most student access issues, if they're having any trouble getting into Yellowdig, are often related to like their specific tech, something browser setting in their browser, an extension they might be using. So this goes along with what Bob said earlier, but it's often better, faster, and easier for everyone, you, the student, and us, if you just have them reach out to support@yellowdig.com if they're having any access problems. We can get them going pretty quickly in almost all cases. The other thing, and this goes along a little bit with the notion of linking your course to a learning management system. But if you are using a learning management system, we do not recommend you invite students into those communities through some of the other methods that you can do that. So you can invite students by email, and you can give people invite links, both of which would give people access to the community, but it doesn't establish their grade and link them into the learning management system. And if the learning management system passes a different email or something, it could create a duplicate account when they finally do access it through the learning management system. So we don't recommend inviting students that you're going to be using grade passback for into a community using the email or invite links. Those functions are really useful for other things. Um, inviting in an alumni member to talk to your class, inviting, a guest speaker of some sort that's an expert in your field, or for communities where you want open access. Maybe you want to have a community for the instructors at your university. You can just send them an invite link and they'll all be able to get into that community really easily.
So moving forward, this is a good time to talk about what's new. We're going to jump into the platform in a minute and start talking about setting up your course and stuff like that. But we wanted to point out a few things that are new so that you know them when you see them and know how to use them. So first of all, and probably the most apparent change will be the point communication widget and modal, which you can see a screenshot of there on the left. Brian, you want to go through that a little bit and talk about
Yeah.
why we changed it?
Yeah, so the top section of that with the yellow speedometer just shows students how many points they've earned out of the total that they'll need to earn for the course, right? And again, we think of Yellowdig as a semester long assignments with a single goal. So they're going to work towards achieving that goal. Um, we have periods in our system with individual sort of targets that students can try to achieve on a weekly basis. And so we're showing them that pace part of their grade there, where they'll be able to earn up to a certain number of points each week. And when they achieve that goal, they'll be able to see that there. And then we added a notification area below that, which is adaptive to the current situation that the student finds themselves in. In cases where they're doing well, they're ahead of pace, they'll say, they'll get a message that says they're doing great, keep going. If they've hit their weekly maximum, they'll see that they've hit their maximum. If they're falling behind a little bit, they'll see that as they approach the weekly rollover. If they aren't yet at the maximum that they can get, it'll tell them exactly how many points they can get and when that rollover is going to happen. So it's really adaptive and informative there to tell them exactly what they can or should do given their own personal situation.
And we would encourage you to direct students there for all of their questions about their points and grade. And you can see a show details button that we'll go into a little bit deeper in a minute, that gives more of that information. Other things that are new, you may have already seen drafts, the ability to start a post for you or for students and to go back in, edit it, and post it later. And you can do more than one draft and just use that as you like. Reminder notifications, which again have been in the platform for most of the last semester, and they offer a way for you to easily nudge students to remind them to come back into the platform. Bookmarks. What do you think bookmarks are, Brian?
Bookmarks are just an easy way to keep track of posts that you really liked or that you want to be able to find again. So you can just enable a bookmark on any post or comment, and you'll be able to find those in an area. Those are releasing.
And a particular note coming next week, topics without points. Topics without points. In other words, you'll be able to create a topic that students, along with your other topics, that a student can engage with, that can create a post, but will not get points. And this can be really useful for things like a coffee shop environment, the area for students to have off-topic conversations. Did you find a new apartment? How did the game go, or what have you? But basically, things that students sometimes are valuable to the community as a whole, to learn about each other and to know who you're talking with, but without having the feeling that I'm giving students points for talking about their favorite ice cream flavor. These point topics without points will be available very soon. We'll talk about those. Take it.
Yeah, we are also adding a function for @mentions. So you've always been able to @mention individual people within a community. We're adding an @community notification for instructors to be able to use to mention the entire class at one time. That'll be really useful for making class announcements or whatever that you want to make sure everybody gets a notification for. And then we're also adding an @admins function, we're primarily thinking students will be able to use this to mention the entire instructional team, the owner, and the community facilitators. Both of those functions will be optional, so you can turn them on or off. So if you don't want students to be able to mention your entire instructional team in one shot, you would be able to turn that off. We think those will be really useful features for the community.
And finally, something behind the scenes, we mentioned the learning tool interoperability standard. That's what allows Yellowdig to communicate and integrate with your learning management system. There is a new standard called LTI 1.3. Previously, the standard was LTI 1.1, which still exists. LTI 1.3 allows some improvements in the integration process. And currently at Yellowdig, it is available to be used right now in Canvas. And beta for other learning management systems. So this may not apply directly to you, but it will make it so that it's easier for students to populate into your community, and also enable some other features down the road.
Yeah, just to be really clear with anybody on the call, this does require specific integration with your university before it is made available to anybody to use. So it's going to have some really cool roster management features, assignment setup features that it won't require students to click a graded assignment link anymore. There's some really worthwhile things in here, but it will not be available until we integrate with your university. So um, we're definitely starting conversations with all of our partners to get that in place. But if you're interested and you have any control over that, definitely start a conversation with us, or talk to your LMS admins about getting that process going.
All right, so hopefully I've switched screens to a Business 101 community.
Yes.
Okay, all right, so we're gonna get in and we're gonna get going. First of all, something that may be new to some of you is the announcements feature, which will give you information as we're, anytime as to what's new in the platform or any other important announcements. And as you see, we already mentioned bookmark conversations and some point communication improvements that Brian already talked about. And those are there for you always. They're a little present, these announcements. Also, while we're here, in case you didn't already know, this help button will give you access to our entire knowledge base, along with the most used articles, and also the ability to contact support directly from this email button here as well. But let's talk about copying courses now, all right, because you might want to do that. And so, as Brian mentioned before, if you spawn Yellowdig, a Yellowdig community from your learning management system, it will open up, it will create a new community when you create that assignment link and you click on it. We're not going to do that today because we're not connected to the learning community. Another way to create a community is to go to the little My Communities, all communities button and click Create Community. Like I said, it's going to be probably better for you if you create it from the learning management system, but this is another option. So I'm just going to do that, and you're going to see that, yep, it's going, that we have a new community here. So what if I wanted to take my previous community and use some of the things, some of the settings from it, Brian? What would I do?
Yeah. So you have to give it a title, but then at the bottom of the form, you'll see two options to copy content from and copy settings from. You will be able to find in those drop downs any community that you are an owner of. So in this demo, Bob is the owner of Business 101. He is able to copy content or copy settings from that community just because he already owns it.
Now, Brian, that
Uh,
seems really cool. Do I want to copy both of these things?
yeah, so typically copying settings is a good idea if you want to recreate the topics that you've used in a previous course. It'll bring over emojis that you've enabled or disabled. It'll bring in all of the accolades that you created previously. So it can be a great way to create or use a template community to create a copy. The copy content field has a couple of caveats that I would mention, which is just basically that it only copies content, it only copies posts that were created by the community owner or one of the facilitators, right? So when you do the copy content, it will only copy those posts that somebody on the instructional team made from the previous course, and it will copy all of them if you use an active course, right? So if you use a community that was actively in use, it will copy every post. If you're making a template, you can have just a couple of posts in it, it'll copy them in.
So in other words, if I created a post every few days in my course over the course of 10 weeks and I copied it over, all of those posts would show up and none of the comments attributed to them,
Yeah,
correct?
that's correct.
Okay.
And the reason we don't copy student content or comments is for privacy reasons. And you know, we we were we didn't want people copying content from one course into the next one, um, and seeing
Oh yeah, and Lindsay asks about the start end dates. It's not going to copy the start end dates. You're going to have to manually input them, and there's a good reason for that. They're
those.
different than the ones from before,
Yeah,
which I think you grasp.
yeah, the dates are the only thing that don't copy from the point system, the start and end dates. And it's exactly for the reason that Bob highlighted. We actually used to copy them, and sometimes people wouldn't adjust them, and then they would be confused why the point system wasn't, accumulating points for students. So we thought we found it was better to just drop those out. And in the getting started flow, when you start a new community, it will be the first step to set those up, and do that.
So there's one other scenario that maybe you've created a course and you've got another instructor who's teaching the same course and you want them to be able to use the settings or the content that you have, or maybe you want to borrow, or maybe you're a course developer and you want to create a master course that you can spawn to other people. There is then the notion of the template, and if you go into that master course, that the original, you can scroll down under the settings in basic and choose copy the template link to share. It'll copy, and then when you go into that new course, instead of, if you don't have your own to copy from, you can just simply paste that template and choose the content or the information from that course to put in. And it's very simple. Again, same issues with the settings being copied over versus the content being copied over. And as you can see, as I did that, it's now prompting me, as it will you, to enter that start and end date. And so you'll just click continue, and you'll put in your first day and your last day. The main thing to know about this is that, first of all, remember, this is not a weekly thing, so you have to do it for the entire semester. But probably more importantly, the rollover date, the date that the point limiter kicks in, is based on the last day of earn points, not the first day to earn points. So when creating that rollover, let's say I was going to do the end of March or something like that, right? That shows me what the rollover date is. That maybe I'm starting the course on February 1st or something like that. And you'll notice that the first earning period can be longer than the rest. And that's based on that end date, okay? So the first one is going to be whatever day you start up to that rollover date, whatever day of the week that is. And then all the rest will be 1 week, ending at midnight of or 11:59 of the day of that rollover. And so you can go ahead and then set up participation, which would give you, the dates aren't entered here. I must not have locked them in. But this is where you can go and change your participation settings. I would encourage you to use the default settings that we have that are going to provide data tested results as far as point numbers, word counts, and things like that. There's another question. What is that?
Yeah, so Nicole, the way that the system works as far as counting points is when they hit the end date or when the end date lapses, students stop accumulating points. Our system will pass back the grade uh, a couple of times in that period, and then pass back actually also stops to the learning management system. So those are kind of the two things that happen at the time that the end date lapses. And if you if you want to allow students to earn points sort of after the end date of the course or whatever, you would just want to set your end date for Yellowdig um, at the time that you really want them to stop earning points. I hope that answers the question.
All right. So, so you've set up your course, you've put in a start date and an end date, you've set up your point amount, you've followed our defaults. If you follow our defaults, you're going to get 1,000 points per earning period, which, let's say it's a 10-week course, that would indicate you get to 10,000 points, and students would be limited to earning 1,000 points per week unless you added a buffer, which again, we would encourage. And if it's, let's say it's a 40% buffer again, which is a value that we encourage, that would mean that students could earn up to 1,400 points in any particular earning period, meaning that some weeks they can earn more than 1,000 points, and some weeks they can earn under 1,000 points and still manage to make their way to their full point total that they need. All right. And so just getting back to the points, since we're talking about them, this point modal, as you can see, again, the color of the message is changed here because this person hasn't earned points or because the point earning window has changed. It's not green, so there's some urgency that might be conveyed to that student. But the point modal, the pop-up that appears, is very different now than it was just a few weeks ago. It's first of all, it makes it easier to return to the screen you're on, but secondly, it shows the information in a much more organized fashion and easier to sort of grasp. Starting with the grade, it's displayed there with information if a student needs it. And then I really like the change to the participation log. The participation log used to be buried in the point modal, and it went in chronological order. It made it difficult to sort of find what you're looking for up front. It is now in reverse chronological order, and it's right at the top because it's what students need. They need to know, what have I earned points for? What did I not earn points for? And in the, I don't have any points in this particular community, but it would,
Yeah,
what was that?
you reset the date for all of the times that the point posts were. So
Oh, okay, well,
yeah.
oops.
The
And
changes you made earlier, yeah.
oh, okay. Anyway, so they will see what they earned. It'll say if there was a post, it'll say post 280 points, 42 words or 150 words. If it was 39 words, it would say 0 points and have all the other information as well. It would also show any accolades, any comments, any reactions. And you as instructors have the same view in the points report under data. So you'll always be exactly in sync in knowing exactly what every student has earned, and there should never be any reason to have a question between you and your students about the points that they've earned. All right, and next to that, or beyond that, is my participation, which is an opportunity for students to see the pace that they're on towards their total points. All right, so this yellow line indicates the points that they've earned, and these blue dots are the period targets. So if the yellow line is near or above or just below the blue line, the students know that they're pretty much, blue dots, students know that they're pretty much on pace. And if it's below those blue dots, they know they've got some work to do to go forward. And let's talk about how they earn those points, Brian.
Yeah, so the point earning rules are going to show up in this area of the platform now. A really similar screen was in there before, but we wanted to reveal a little bit what these point earning rules do and a little bit about how we recommend setting them up. So these are showing the current defaults in the platform. where if I create a post, I'll get 280 points for a post as long as it's longer than 40 words. And if Bob comments on my post with more than 20 words, he'd get 210 points. So in that scenario, we both earn points for participating. And in Yellowdig, basically, that's how you start earning points. Um, you have to start participating with either a post or a comment. Um, when Bob comments on my post with the social points on, which are these next two categories of points, when Bob comments on my post, I would receive another 70 points on, for that post, based on the fact that he engaged with my post and continued a conversation with me. If another student reacted to that post or Bob reacted to that post, I would get additional points for that post. So those social points are, rewards for students that come in early, start good conversations, and really get and keep a conversation going.
So
And
Brian, what
yeah,
if I went in and created a post and I went in earlier in that earning period because I know that more of my peers are going to see it, but everyone passed it by. They saw it and passed it by. Why might they have done that?
yeah. So in most cases in these communities, if something is not being engaged with, it's because it's not relevant to the course. It's really not well written or articulate, or students read it and they don't understand what the person is trying to say. Um, or it's just not really very interesting or insightful, or
So
there's
you've
not
read
a
my
good
work
question in
before. Yeah.
there.
Okay.
um, so those social points really matter for the health of communities, because they get students to come in earlier, to come back more often to continue a conversation, because they're kind of being incentivized to do that, and for them to post better, more thoughtful things in the community that are going to be interesting.
We also want to point out that commenting by default is worth more per word than posting, and that's intentional. It's because we don't want everyone to feel that they need to start a conversation, especially the same conversation as somebody else. We want to empower students to earn their points, whether it's through posting or commenting. So please, when you see that setting, please make note of that and note that that's why commenting is worth more. And finally, reactions. Students giving the reaction do not get any points. The student receiving the reaction to a post or a comment are the ones getting points. And it shows that people are reading those posts, that they're engaged with them. Maybe they didn't have a comment to add, but they wanted to acknowledge a well-written post or something like that. And it shows that they're into it, and the other student getting it will feel good. All right, I think we need to move on because of time. And I want to jump to setting expectations. I meant to get to that first, but when you start a Yellowdig community, in order to get it off to the best possible outcome, we think that it's pretty good practice to sort of let students know, hey, this is why you're here. Why are we doing this? And so I would encourage you to let students know the purpose of having the Yellowdig community, your role as an instructor, what they should expect from you in the community, and finally, what you expect of them in the community. And one really wonderful way to do this that'll start modeling the behavior, and that's sort of our mantra, model the behavior you want to see in the community. To do that is by using the record video function. And then you'll see that I'm in front of a green screen, and say something like that. You have 90 seconds in this video, and you can pause whenever you want in this video. There's a little pause button there, and you've got 90 seconds to create a video, and you can say something like, hi everybody, welcome to our Yellowdig community. The purpose of having this community is for us to have conversations around course concepts, for us to share ideas and thoughts related to the things that we're discussing in class, to bring in our own personal experiences, to see what's going on in the real world and how it relates to the concepts we're talking about in the class. Also, for you to have the opportunity to ask and answer all of your course questions in the class. And remember, you'll get points for doing this as well. My role in this community is to be another citizen of the community. I hope to share some of my passion for this subject matter I may occasionally post something that I think is interesting. I may ask a question, and I may occasionally comment on a post or comment that you've made. But don't expect me to comment on every single post or comment that comes up in Yellowdig. But I will, however, add accolades for certain outstanding types of posts or posts that I want you to see and notice and try to emulate. So you'll get a point boost for those. And finally, as far as what I'm expecting of you, I'm expecting you to have respectful conversations with your peers about the concepts we're talking about in our course. And I'd like to urge you to have a little bit of fun here too, and really let's just learn from each other. Something like that. It's going to be short and it's going to be easy, and students will see a little bit of your personality, and they'll know maybe how to create their own introduction in Yellowdig as well. So it goes a long way for really setting getting the ball rolling the right way. Let's see, there's some more stuff in the chat. Oh, and that was just Brian.
I did that. Yeah. Just to build on this, just the tiniest little bit, I think a lot of instructors realize they need to tell the students what's expected of them, but don't think it's or don't think to tell students what they can expect of the instructors participation in the community. And I do think that setting those expectations can make a huge difference in students understanding the value of participating here, and understanding how you're going to tie this to their course, understanding how this experience is really going to build on their educational experience.
Fantastic. Two other things that we need to talk about are topics and accolades. And we're going to start with topics because there have been some changes to topics. We want to make sure that you fully understand how they can work for you, and also provide you with valuable information about where your students are, and also how they can guide the conversations that you want students to have. But probably on the most exciting part of it, there's some new features and topics that we want to talk about. So you can create topics, and we would encourage you to do this in your course and not just accept our default topics by going to topics. In fact, when you do the getting started flow, there'll be an opportunity for you to create them right there. But if you get out of there and you want to go back to topics, going to settings and topics is the way to do that. And to create a new topic, you type some words, and that's the top, and then click submit. I'm not going to do that here in this community. But it's very simple to do that. You should make sure that topics are required. That is our recommended setting for course communities. There are other settings for other communities, but that is our recommended for course communities. But here's some new things about topics. So you've created a topic, and you can now reorder topics. This has been available for most of this semester. And reordering these topics may seem like, well, where does it show up? It shows up in the topic selector when students are creating a post. So you can frame what you want them to see at the top so that they're more likely to engage on those topics. So you can put the topic that you're covering in the next couple of weeks up at the top and demote a topic that is less important to the current conversation down the list. Another thing that you can do is you can disable topics now. And what that means is that you don't want to delete topics. You'll notice there's a little thing here that says remove. That's for before your community starts. But once your community starts, you never want to remove a topic. Instead, you want to just disable it if you don't want students to engage in it anymore. That means that all those posts and comments under that particular topic will still be there. Everyone will still be able to find them, but nobody will be able to post using that topic tag going forward. So, and then the other thing that's coming next week is no point topics. And in the same sort of widget here that you'll see, instead below enable topic, I believe it is, it'll say enable points, and that'll be on by default. But if you turn that off, what will happen, Brian?
Yeah, anybody that creates a new post or talks in a conversation with that point disabled topic off will not earn points for that activity. Because conversations can have more than one topic, if there is a topic that has points enabled, it would earn points. And you'll be able to see the topics that are point disabled because they'll be white with colored text and um, a dashed outline to them, so they'll look clearly differentiated when students are using them and posting with them.
It'll sort of be an X-ray of these. Um, and again, think about your topics as guiding the conversations. Create them in line with your top level syllabus subject matter. Use the actual words. Don't use week 1, module 2, chapter 3, because that'll make it harder to get back to those topics. And it'll be harder for students to find those conversations they want to see. It'll also make your data look a little harder to interpret. So use real words or the conversations that you want to see. I know we're really coming up on time. Want to quickly talk about accolades, and we also want to talk about your role as the instructor once the course gets going a little bit. So as you may know, accolades are point awards and badges that you can award students for various types of posts and comments. And yeah, the accolades really allow you to be present in the community without interrupting the flow of a good student conversation, right? There are definitely times when you want to jump in and add to a conversation, or as I would like to call it, extend a conversation. But if a student conversation is going really well, you want other students to know that as well and see that that's the kind of conversation you want them to have. And you can do that very simply by choosing a really good comment or post and clicking the Manage Accolades button and just choosing one of those accolades to add to the post. Use it sparingly because you don't want students to expect it on everything that they do, but it is a great way for them to know, oh yeah, the professor's here. They think this is important and they thought this was the kind of thing I should be doing here. So please consider using those accolades.
Yeah, from a data perspective, we definitely see that giving out a handful or a few accolades per week makes a big difference in students participating in the community. They learn what they should model their behavior around. They know that you're there and present and that you care about what's going on, and that's a great way to make the community more healthy.
Yeah, so let's continue on that in the few minutes that we have left. What is the role of the instructor in the community, and how can the instructor, when should the instructor participate, and when should the instructor maybe just sit back?
Yeah, so one, it tends to be the case that if an instructor jumps into a conversation, that all of the students start sort of like paying attention to them, just like you might see or expect as you're walking around small group conversations in the classroom. So if the conversation is going really well, a lot of times we suggest not jumping in. If you see a post that you thought was really good and you want to build conversation off of it, or you saw a comment and you think it deserves to have it more of a conversation, but it's not happening, that would be an opportunity for you to jump in and maybe add a thought or bring in another resource or ask a question. Do a lot of the things that you would hope another student would do to extend a conversation. The one kind of behavior pattern I recommend against is just acknowledging every single post or acknowledging them with just like a great job. If you say great job in the middle of a conversation that's still ongoing, it will almost always shut it down because students think, well, everything's been said, and and so you kind of like put the end to that conversation by just saying great job. The other thing I always say is like if your goal is to model your behavior after sort of being an ideal citizen in the community, you wouldn't want the students to go around and say great job to every other person's post. That would be a behavior pattern that you wouldn't want to inspire. So think about that as you're participating, extend the conversation, ask good questions. And the only other thing I'll say is, a little goes a long way for these accolades, for commenting. Like students want to know that you're there. They want to know you're interested in what's happening, but they don't necessarily want you to be involved in every single conversation.
One last thing I'd like to add is that if you have a synchronous element of your class or other elements of your class outside of Yellowdig, another way to have that presence is to share things that you think are important in Yellowdig in those other parts of the class. Bring up those conversations in the synchronous part of your class and vice versa. Talk about the stuff in the synchronous part in Yellowdig as
Yeah.
well.
Do you want to quickly show the uh, permalinks in case people don't know where those
Oh,
are?
thank you. Yeah.
You can pull a permalink for any comment or any post, right? And so if Bob were to copy that permalink, he could put it in an email to his students, or he could, you know, save that for later, and bring it up in a course, in a synchronous session. Pretty soon you'll be able to bookmark, or bookmarks is actually turned on in this community. You can also bookmark those so that you'd be able to find them later, and use those permalinks for anything you like.
All right. So we're just about at time. So we would certainly like to ask you if you have any more questions. And apparently there is one there. Um, and let's read that. In terms of considering student and faculty overload, do folks give time from the lesson? For example, I'm wondering if it might make sense to make my weekly 3-hour class 20 minutes shorter and tell the students it's because I'm expecting more time on Yellowdig. So from my perspective, participation grade was very important to me in my classes when I was teaching, because it helped me know where students were, right? And the problem was that it was less objective than I would have liked, and there wasn't an opportunity, no matter how hard I tried, to have everyone have an equal opportunity to give that kind of participation. And Yellowdig enables that exact behavior. So what you're proposing, Corey, I wouldn't go as far as to say that's necessary, but it's not a terrible idea at all. Brian, do you have anything you'd want to add to that?
No, I mean, I think that we see people using Yellowdig to kind of free up space in their courses for various different things, right? So being able to have good conversations in between course sessions, allows you to dedicate some of that course time to other things that may be more important, and maybe giving students a little bit more free time is one way that would be important.
Yep. And
Um,
by the way, you mentioned graduate students, Corey, and we have quite a bit of Yellowdig use in graduate courses, MBA programs, et cetera, all over. And one thing that these students seem to find very valuable is the opportunity to network with each other because of, like you said, their jobs and all that kind of stuff, and share their issues that they're having. So using the new no point topic might be a real valuable way for you to allow students to accomplish some of that. Or you could even give them points for that. That's up to you, though.
The other thing that I think that we see, in a more open format with allowing students to contribute all throughout, is that especially those adult students or really busy people will find 5 minutes a day to come into Yellowdig and participate. They have a better experience because they're coming back often. They can jump in on their phone, but then they're not spending 2 hours on Sunday night, which could be good family time, working on a discussion post right before the deadline. So we actually find that this model works incredibly well for people that are very busy, because they can fit visiting Yellowdig into much smaller periods of time throughout the week.
Anyway, I believe we're at time, and I actually can stick around a minute or two if anyone wants to ask any other questions. Otherwise, we're going to say thank you very much for attending. If you need anything more, or if you'd like to set up a webinar or a session like this for others in your institution, we would be happy to do a specific internal one for your particular institution or department. And we'd also just like to say thank you for using Yellowdig, and really have a great holiday season and a happy new year. And we're here for you.